Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is an Invicta diver, I'll put the model number in the comments there. But this is a little watch by a company called Invicta that a lot of people have asked me to start doing some reviews of. And, well, we'll talk a little bit more about Invicta here during the course of this, but there you go. First off, though, I want to thank very much my buddy Josh for sending this guy along. He runs a blog, Journey Win Junk, and sent this guy to me for free just to be rid of it. And, you know, I can understand that at some level. So, but thank you very much for giving me a chance to. Let's do a little size comparison here real quick. First off, on the comparison front, here it is against the Citizen BM8180, which is another relatively inexpensive quartz piece. This comes in about 120 bucks, actually about twice the price. But still, here it is against the Casio F108. Which is an interesting little quartz piece, and then against a couple of higher-end pieces. Here it is against a Quartz Omega Seamaster, which is not the watch it's based off, obviously, but one of the competition, so to speak. And then here it is against the Omega Planet Ocean. This is the 8900 model, and so you can see here that there are a couple of differences here. This is much smaller than the Planet Ocean, much thinner, too. So, anyways, that is those are some size comparisons, and actually, let's do some measurements right quick, just so you can get a better sense of things. Move us to millimeter here, and then excluding the crown, we are at about 37 millimeters overall wide. The lug-to-lug distance appears to be about 46 millimeters, which is nice and small. The band size here looks to be about 18 millimeters. Yeah, 18 millimeters or so is the overall band size. And then the actual face of the watch comes in about 28 millimeters. So there you go. And then, I should measure. The bracelet does taper down to 15 in the back. So there you go. Then finally, I do want to identify the elephant in the room, and that is that this watch is what is called an homage. It is a design that is basically the Rolex Submariner. I'll go ahead and actually use some movie magic to put one of those guys right up here in the corner so you can get a sense of what's going on here. But that is definitely a thing, and it's something I'm going to be talking about later, and it's something that there are questions there. So anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this little Invicta diver guy. So first off, on the good side, I think this is a really nice watch size. Honestly, it's made for people. It's a good size for people even with relatively small wrists. Here, I'll throw it on my wrist for a second here. And I'm running about 6.75 inches or so on the wrist, and you know what? It fits well. The lug-to-lug is nice. Even though the lugs are relatively long, it fits well, and I think that this is just well done here. Considering that many watches, especially in the modern era, are now gigantic, I appreciate that this one isn't. And it fits nicely under a cuff, being, I forgot to measure the thickness of it. We're coming in around 11 millimeters here, so that's pretty solid. So that's good. Next thing, the bracelet on this guy is similarly well-sized. It's not too big, it's not too thick. You can see here, I mean, again, it's nice. The entire thing has good proportions. Speaking of this bracelet, you also get 4 holes worth of quick adjust, where you can use a tool and poke this spring bar in and then move this back and forth by about 4 holes. And you know what? That's nice. That gives you a lot of adjustability, and it makes up for the fact that, you have larger links to adjust with. No problem there. Next thing, the design of this is truly classic, and that is because it is Rolex's classic design. Not an Invicta design, mind you, but it is a classic 100%, so I guess that's good. Next thing, this is a quartz movement, which is good. It is accurate, it's durable, it's got a long power reserve, and I maintain that for most people in the world, a quartz watch is just going to be a better choice, because it'll last 3 or 4 years on a charge. It'll, get on the order. This guy's been, I think, minus 0.2 seconds a day in my timing run here, as opposed to, a real Rolex sub isn't always going to be there. And so quartz is just a beautiful thing. This also has a date window, which you can see here under this somewhat awkward cyclops. And if you pull it out here, you can get a quick set on that date. And actually, so that's pretty good. I can't argue with the quick set there. What day is it? 24th. And so that, accidentally poked it in too far there. 24. Okay, case closed. And so that's good. Then the price on this guy is actually okay. You're coming in at about 60 bucks here. That's not a bad price, but it's also not a great one. One thing to note, though, is that Invicta as a company is a big fan of using fake MSRPs. This is a well-known psychological trick called price anchoring, where if you give somebody a ridiculously high price and then show them a much lower real price, they will find that real price more compelling than if you just started with that number. And so this has, a $90 MSRP, but then it's actually only for sale for 60 bucks. So don't ever believe a number that someone's not willing to sell it to you at. That's the only real price on this guy. MSRP is absolutely fake. But the thing is, 60 bucks, yeah, that's a fair amount of money, but it is a metal bracelet, it is a metal watch, and superficially, I gotta say, this looks pretty decent for 60 bucks. So there you go. And part of the reason for that, and the very last good thing here, is that they've made a lot of effort here to mirror some of the details found in higher-end pieces. So what I mean by that is let's look at some of these things. You have polished center links on this guy. You can see here that every one of these center links here has a little bit of polishing to it, which is nice. And actually, and it's not terrible polishing either. I mean, it's not, oh my God, high-quality Seiko polishing, but it does the trick. And so that's a nice little detail. It's a little flashy. The side links are polished as well here. It's not just the case that they are brushed as they are, for instance, on this Omega Seamaster here. You get the sides of case, which have a contrast between brushed on some surfaces and polished on other surfaces. That's always nice. You get these nice little metal rings around the indices here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see the face. It's not just the case that the indices are painted on, like it is, for instance, in this little Citizen here, where it's just text written on the dial. Here, they have what are called applied indices. And similarly, the Invicta logo, both the lettering and the overall, the little wing thing there, those are applied as well, which is nice. And, those are details. And they've even got the Cyclops on there. And so at some level, you know what? They've done a lot of finishing on this little guy to make it look as acceptable as it does. Whoops. And so that's probably a good thing. And so all of that is the good. They've put a lot of effort in to try and give this some of the same details that you find on a higher-end piece, which is good. The price on it is okay. The date is present, and it has quickset, which is nice. It has a quartz movement, which is probably going to be a better choice for most people than a mechanical movement. It is a classic design, albeit it's Rolex's classic design. It is a nice bracelet size, and it is a great size. To me, what's great about this watch actually is the lume on it. And the lume, hold on just a second. I forgot to grab my flashlight. The lume on this is surprisingly good. I've got a big old flashlight. I'm going to charge this off camera here. And what you'll be able to see is that there is lume on these hands, and it is like a good luminous compound. You can see that the indices fade much more quickly, and there's no lume on the date window side. But the thing is, overnight, this absolutely did light up all night. You roll over at 6 a.m., and you know what? It's still glowing. And the hands especially are very, very solid. And so I respect the fact that a lot of lower-end manufacturers do not bother with good lume, but Invicta did here. And so that was a big surprise to me. And as a lume snob, I find that really great. And so, to me, that's the great thing here, is that the lume on this guy is worth a damn. On the bad side, first off, you can see here that they're claiming a 600 feet, 200 meter water resistant on this guy. I don't know that I buy that, because the crown on this guy does not screw down at all. You can just pop it right out there immediately. I haven't tested it. Maybe somebody has pressure tested it. Maybe they are using high enough quality seals, but I wouldn't trust this as a dive watch per se as a result of that. But then again, I'm saying this on the basis of skepticism. I've got no evidence otherwise. So if you got a pressure test, give it a try. See if you flood the thing. Next thing, this has the date Cyclops on this guy. As you can see here, it's not particularly well done. Particularly on the right side of it here, there's a lot of distortion. See, look at what's going on to the fore here, and that's the case on most angles. And so if you compare this date Cyclops to one that you see on, for instance, an actual Rolex, or even some other watches that are a little bit higher up the range, this is a relatively unimpressive and high distortion one. Very often, as I was looking at the date, I found myself wishing that I didn't have a Cyclops there, because it would be easier to read. That's ugly. Next thing, this is a very rattly watch. I mean, here, I'll put it on and just let you listen to the rattlication here. Rattlication? Sure, that's a word now. Why not? So this is just kind of, every part of this, unfortunately, just sounds rattly and cheapy. And that's just not great. Ow. So, okay, which brings me to my other point that this is a hair grabby bracelet. This bracelet loves eating hair on your arms, and that's not a good thing. And so the combination of the rattlingness and the fact that it keeps grabbing arm hairs is not a great thing. Next thing I got to say, hold on just a second here. Next thing that is a little bit unpleasant about this guy, we'll come back to why I'm doing this in a second, is that the end links on this are 100% hollow. What I mean by that here, we'll take a look at the Omega here. We can see that on this guy, there are solid chunks of metal that are linking the spring bars to the watch case there. Whereas on this guy, this is just a little hollow here. This sheet of metal is just sticking up above the spring bars, and so that's just going to collect crud and water and whatnot. I don't love hollow end links. That's a part of the reason why things sound as rattly and whatnot as they do. And so that's not very good. Next thing, the diver's bezel on this. This does have a diver's bezel, and it does, in fact, rotate. But the thing is, it absolutely sucks to use. There we go. The nice part is that it's not going to accidentally turn because it's barely going to purposefully turn. But by God, it's there. Ah, there we go. Oh, damn it, not quite. So that's really unpleasant. This is the worst diver's bezel I've had the opportunity to use, and that's saying something, because I've had a lot of crappy diver's bezels across my table. And so that's not good. And then finally on the bad side, something that is not a functional issue, but is a drives me freaking nuts issue, and that is the fact that the second hand on this guy almost never actually aligns with the indices. You'll get lucky very rarely, but it is the case that in this guy, almost always, it is just going to point at some random place. And in fact, you can see the hand kind of flutter a little bit each time it lands on a second there. And so even doing basic things like checking the accuracy, where you try it, you tap when it hits, you know, the 10-second mark or something like that, becomes a little bit of a trouble on this guy. Compare this to a quartz watch that is worth a damn. For instance, this little Omega Seamaster here, where every damn time it accurately hits the marker on there. Not super impressed by that. And so that to me is what's bad here, is that the hand alignment is just not very good for the quartz here. The diver's bezel is just awful. The bracelet is very hair-grabby with the hollow end links and the rattliness to it overall. The date cyclops on this guy is not well done and adds a lot of distortion, and I don't quite believe that 200-meter depth rating. On the ugly front, first off, I gotta say, Invicta, can you put another logo on this damn thing? They've got the wing thing up here. They've got Invicta written here. They've got the logo on the side here. They've got this little guy down here on the back of it here. Then they've got on the clasp here, they've got Invicta. But then they realized, wait a second, maybe someone won't know that this is an Invicta. And so they put this on the side of it too. Like, guys, there were brands that you'd be, proud of. This is not one of them. Don't put it everywhere. I mean, maybe this is a part of their, just trying to make sure people don't believe that this is actually a Rolex thing. But holy crap, guys, calm it down a little bit. Next thing, this has what I call the Hotel California clasp, and that you can check out anytime you'd like, but you'd never leave. Meaning that when this guy is on your wrist, it is really, really, really freaking hard to disengage this. I don't keep long fingernails. Maybe if I were a Spanish guitar player or Sabretooth from the X-Men franchise, I would have a nail that I could get in under there to pull this guy off, but I do not. And so when I wore this watch, I needed to make sure that I had something in my life that I could use to get up under here and pry that guy loose, because, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being a drama queen here, that is really, really hard to get open. The rest of it is very easy and no problem, but this freaking clasp thing, you need a tool to get off of your wrist, and that's just not great. I don't like that. It leads to scratching, and frankly, it leads to you being trapped with an Invicta on your wrist, which is, well, a thing. And then finally, on the ugly side, and probably the ugliest thing about this watch, is the fact that it is, design-wise, just entirely a Rolex Submariner Homage. Here, I'll put it over here, and then I'll put your Rolex in the corner here. They have accomplished, design-wise, absolutely nothing unique or differentiating. The kindest thing, frankly, that can be said about this watch design is that they have preserved a fair amount of what made the Rolex Submariner attractive. I mean, this has nearly every single element of the Rolex Submariner. It's got the Mercedes hands here, with the little 3 lines in the middle there. That's something I find really tacky on a watch that isn't a Rolex, just because that is so much their thing. Given, okay, whatever. But it has, the bezel looks almost identical identical to some vintage Rolex. Well, not vintage, but like a prior model pre-maxi case Rolexes. The bezel on this guy absolutely is there. The four lines of text down here, that's from the sub too. It's got the Cyclops. It's got the same crown guard kind of thing. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that this is like 18 Invicta stamps away from being a bad counterfeit Rolex. Let's be real here. And so I'm not impressed with that. They are just using somebody else's design. And that's just really, really lazy, and that's really, really ugly. And so to me, that's the ugly here, is that this is absolutely a shameless Rolex Submariner homage with no effort made to differentiate it, aside from putting the logo on this thing in 15 places. It has the Hotel California clasp that you're just not getting off, and then they could probably find another place for a logo, but I can't figure out where it would be. So, there you go. Let's talk final conclusions. And that's my final conclusion here, is that this is a watch that is okay. I mean, it takes along. It keeps the time. It's got good lume, surprisingly so. And it does have a usable and simple design, which has stood the test of time, because Rolex has been making this design for 64 years. But the problem is this implementation of that design has got some serious functional issues. I mean, the hand alignment is brutal. It's just not very good. And mind you, that's not like a serious functional problem, but it's still not great. The bezel on the is just ugly. That's bad. It cannot work here. The bracelet is honestly really ugly in terms of pulling your hair. The fact that you can't get it off there. The clasp is just awful. And although it does enough to work, I mean, this is a watch that will tell time on your wrist. It's just not super impressive. But the thing is, I think for a lot of people outside of the watch game, for people who don't know what an Omega is, but, just know that, oh, yeah, this is a watch that looks a lot like the ones that all the celebrities wear or something like that, this is probably going to pass muster as a good watch. And that's because they've really spent a lot of time putting on sort of the superficial layer of what makes a watch great, even at cost of some of the other things. And it does look superficially pretty decent. But at the end of the day, I find that it feels kind of hollow, because a lot of the money went into, mirroring the look of the high-end stuff. But all the details are a little bit off. I mean, I kind of feel like this is a long-sleeve shirt that's printed to look like a suit jacket with a tie and everything. Yeah, from across the convention hall, it'll absolutely fool somebody, but once you get closer, it's just like, oh, well, never mind. Why you doing that? And, then there's just the laziness of it. Look, inspiration is fine. We are all standing on the shoulders of giants whenever we do anything. But, guys, I can't take you seriously, guys, I mean Invicta, when you're riding somebody else's coattails this hard. I mean, I totally get and I appreciate and I respect the fact that the majority of the world cannot afford a Rolex Submariner, and that the Rolex is not for everybody. This is a more accurate watch. This is a more durable watch. I mean, seriously, Rolex is not the end of... But the thing is, this is just not a great thing. I mean, try to mix it up a little bit, at least. That's all I ask. I mean, whether it's rational or not to pay 100 times more for a watch that's, maybe 40% better in finishing, come on. At least try and change it. Swap the hands. Use something that aren't Mercedes hands. Change the font a little bit on the bezel. Use a different colorway. Use something to show that you have designers and that they do things other than look at Rolex and go, yeah, I can make that. And because otherwise it just feels really lazy. And I mean, I think a good example of doing something a little different is in the Steinhardt Ocean 1 500 Titanium. Steinhardt is a company that also makes unapologetic homage watches. That are just a Rolex sub from somebody else. But the thing is, at least they have like the 500 there, which is absolutely inspired by a lot of dive watches, but it is different. It's using different hands. It's not like you can point at one particular watch and go, yeah, they're just copying that one. And so at least they're trying here, and I'd like to see them try. And I hope that Invicta does more and more move away from these direct homages and towards their own designs, because this is the reason that they don't get much love. I mean, at some level you feel like, okay, well, guys, you can clearly make a good budget watch. You could have done something unique, but then you just made a copy here. And it just feels like when you buy one, it's just like you're pretending to be something. It's like the people who buy a Honda Civic and then spend $20,000 putting a body kit on that makes it look like a BMW. Like, yeah, it'll look a lot like a BMW, but what are you doing, guys? And so, I don't know. This is just not a watch that I recommend, both on terms of function and in terms of I find the homage thing a little bit on the ugly front. And so, there are a lot of watches, though, that I do recommend in this same price range. Things like the Casio Duro is a nice dive watch. It's a little bit cheaper than this. No bracelet, but still. The Casio G-Shock line is absolutely great. The Casio Royale. quartz version. Bertucci makes some field watches that are pretty unique and different in there. Or, I mean, you can buy a bunch of nice watches off of Citizen or off of Fossil or something. It'll have a movement that's about the same in there, but have a little bit more style that's, well, their own. And so at the end of the day, my feelings on this little guy is that it's okay, I guess. It's not terrible. It's not, well, I mean, there are a lot of elements that are, but I think for a lot of people, this would feel like a really good watch. But I don't know. With the functional issues coupled with the pure laziness of the design, I just can't recommend this guy with any kind of conviction. Okay. Anyways, I hope this is interesting to you, that this left you feeling like you were at Homage, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.